The Colts are already one of the best teams in the league. They have arguably the best offensive line, led by guard Quentin Nelson, and they have one of the best defenses in the league, led by linebacker Darius Leonard and defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, who has been an absolute game changer for this defense since being traded for back in the offseason. Jonathan Taylor is looking like a promising starting running back for this team, and who can forget about Goggles at kicker? Although this team is good, they're not Super Bowl contenders yet. But they could potentially become Super Bowl contenders within the next year even. Especially with such a smart front office in Indy, it's very possible. And today here on SportsGlobe, I'm going to be talking about the moves that the Colts could potentially do to become Super Bowl contenders. But before we begin, a majority of you guys watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel. We're trying to build a nice community here on SportsGlobe, and subscribing would help us build that community. We've grown so much in the past week, and we really want to end the year strong. Let's try to set a goal for the end of the year. Let's try to hit 40 subscribers by the end of the year. And I'm sorry for not posting the winner of the question of the video in the Jazz video, so here it is. Congratulations to Zachary Bendera, who said that the Jazz shouldn't give Gobert the Supermax, and they should try to trade him for better pieces that can complement Donovan Mitchell, who hasn't even touched his prime of his career. Great answer, and shout out to Zachary Bendera for the last question of the video. And here's today's question of the video. How far will the Colts go in this year's playoffs? Best answer will receive a shout out in the next video. And also, don't forget to follow us at the socials as we want to start to interact with you guys more on there. I apologize for the long intro, but I had a lot to unpack there. Let's finally get on to the video. So, the Indianapolis Colts are currently 8-4 at the time of recording this video, best for second in the AFC South. Chris Ballard, GM of the Colts, has done a fantastic job with his team since being hired back in 2017. He wanted to build through the draft when he was hired, and he did so, acquiring many draft picks over the past few years and being able to draft many studs, including Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard. Both are all-pro caliber players and have been great for their respective units. Quentin Nelson was such a lifesaver for the Colts as, before him, their offensive line was so bad that Andrew Luck nearly retired. And then a year later, even with Nelson, he did. But after Nelson was drafted, the Colts became one of the best offensive lines in the game, and now they've arguably the best in the league. Darius Leonard was a star as soon as he was drafted, as well as he was selected to the All-Pro first team in his rookie year. Him and DeForest Buckner have led the Colts defense to one of the best this year. And speaking of DeForest Buckner, he was a great addition to this team back in the offseason when they traded the 13th overall pick to the 49ers for him. Buckner has the ability to be a defensive cornerstone, a franchise cornerstone, and he's clearly shown that this year. And even if you take a look at the Titans-Colts game, the one where the Colts got blown out, DeForest Buckner didn't play that game due to being on the COVID-19 reserve list. Without him, they just aren't the same team. That offense is also looking very promising. Like I mentioned multiple times before, their offensive line is arguably the best in the league. Their receiving core is not the greatest by any means and can definitely be improved on. T.Y. Hilton, although disappointing severely in fantasy, has actually had a decent year with 41 receptions and 518 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Although the touchdowns don't look that promising, in the last 2 games, Hilton recorded a touchdown in each game, which should be somewhat promising for the Colts and their fantasy managers, if they are any at this point. The rookie Michael Pittman Jr. has looked promising this year, recording 31 receptions and 376 yards and only 1 touchdown, but considering he's only had 5 starts this year, very promising. And the first matchup against Tennessee this season, Pittman had 7 receptions for 101 yards, which is once again very promising. As for their tight ends, Mo Alley-Cox and Trey Burton have been a solid 1-2 punch for them. On the ground, Jonathan Taylor is leading this team after Marlon Mack suffered a torn Achilles back in Week 1. In 11 games, Taylor has recorded 148 rushing attempts for 609 yards for an average of 4.1 yards per carry. And with 4 scores, Taylor is looking like the future back for the Colts. Nyheim Hines is also looking very promising for this team, as although he hasn't been anything special for this team on the ground, in the air, Hines has 47 receptions for 384 yards and 4 touchdowns. This duo is very young and promising, and I could see them being exactly what Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler were last year for the Chargers. And speaking of Chargers, At the quarterback spot, Phillip Rivers has been actually pretty solid for the Colts compared to how he did last year with the Chargers, as this year he's thrown for 3,263 yards and tossed 18 touchdowns to only 9 interceptions. Rivers at times has been the reason why the Colts have lost games, but when he's playing great, the team wins big. And finally, the special teams. Goggles has been an absolute stud for the Colts and in fantasy. Rigoberto Sanchez recently has been battling a worse kind of battle, the cancer game. He recently just had surgery due to a cancerous tumor, and thankfully it was successful. And please do us a favor and kick cancer in the butt, Rigoberto. Frank Reich has been nothing but fantastic since coming to this team in 2018 after they failed to bring in Josh McDaniels. And that's the current state of the Colts. So now that we've talked about the current state of the team, let's talk about what they could potentially do next to become Super Bowl contenders. In the 2021 offseason, the Colts will have around $67 million in cap space, and they can make some big moves. Both Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett are free agent in 2021, and I just can't see the Colts bringing either of them back. Marlon Mack is also a free agent after this year, and with how Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines have been playing for them, and considering Mack is returning from an Achilles tear, he might be on his way out too. T.Y. Hilton is another big name, but I just can't see him leaving Indy, but I don't think he'll get that big of a contract, maybe a small contract from them. Trey Burton, if you can catch the trend, is yet another free agent after this year, and I think the Colts would love to have him back. Anthony Walker Jr. has been very promising for this team and has been great for the linebacking core, and same with Malik Hooker in the secondary, so they're both back. Xavier Rhodes is an interesting one as he's been pretty good for the Colts this year, but he's 30, but I think the Colts might try to bring him back on a one-year deal. But there are going to be teams that could throw more money at him, such as Jacksonville, and the Colts might not want to risk spending a lot on it for him just to see him regress. And those are really the major free agents for this team. Obviously, they're not going to be able to spend all $67 million considering that they re-sign all these players, but they still have a lot of money. So where could they possibly spend this money? Well, their receiving core is not the greatest, and although Pittman looks promising, they can definitely get a better receiver, as Hilton is also regressing. One name that pops up is Allen Robinson, who has already shown displeasure in Chicago earlier this year. Robinson is in the prime of his career, and his projected market value is nearly $20 million according to SpotTrack. Another name that pops up is Juju Smith-Schuster, who has been pretty good for the Steelers, but the Steelers already have Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, and they might want to just spend that money elsewhere, probably on the defense. Juju's market value is approximately $15.5 million according to SpotTrack, and that is cheaper than the Colts so they can make some other moves possibly. So if they do go out and get one of these guys, then they're still missing a quarterback, as Rivers and Brissett they're probably not going to bring them back. They could take a flyer on Mitchell Trubisky, but that would just be too risky. But their more likely option is through the draft, as they have many options there. Obviously, they're not going to be able to get either Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, but a guy like Zach Wilson, Kyle Trask, or Trey Lance could exactly be what the Colts need. A guy like Trask could be even found in the second round. So if they want to potentially trade up in the second round to take him there, they definitely should. And if they do take Trask in the second round, then they still have their first, because they could take a guy like Devontae Smith, who has been fantastic for the Crimson Tide this year, to help them on the receiving core even more. Or they could even take a cornerback to help that unit. This team has many options, and these moves would definitely make them Super Bowl contenders. And that's the Colts and what moves I think they should make into becoming Super Bowl contenders. I'm going to make this a new series where I take a handful of teams and talk about what moves they could potentially make to become Super Bowl contenders. If you did enjoy this video, remember to like the video and subscribe for more content. Don't forget to answer the video question in the comment section below for a shout out in the next video. And also don't forget to follow us on our socials. Once again, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Peace out.